Hello and welcome to the Soft UK podcast. I'm Kate Hart, the Engagement Officer for the charity Soft UK, which is a support organisation for families affected by Trisomy 13 and 18. In today's episode, we have the pleasure of speaking to Mandy Nelson, who's a remarkable mother to Amari with Trisomy 18, and she's also become recently mother to Dante. So welcome, Mandy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. And perhaps we could start off with you telling us a bit about your journey with Amari. So, your pregnancy, the diagnosis, and your birth, please.
Yeah. So my husband and I always knew we wanted children, and we actually struggled to conceive Amari, and it was very, very much the case that everyone was having children around us, and it just wasn't happening for us. No, particular reason. And then we went down the route of assisted fertility, and we did IVF, and we were very lucky to have Amari or get pregnant with Amari on our first round of IVF. But obviously, as you can imagine, anyone that's been through IVF or just infertility journey in general, the whole process is very much you can't really celebrate anyway until you get to that 12-week mark, because anything can go wrong at any point. So up until kind of 12 weeks, even with the positive result and everything, we were just very grounded. We were like, okay, well, that's great. We'll just, see how it goes. So we finally got to the 12-week scan, and we were really excited. And we were like, finally, we're going to see the baby. This is the point where everyone feels more comfortable in general. And we went in, and everything was fine, except the sonographer at the time said, "Oh, your baby's measuring a bit small." There's no other reasons given. Nothing else kind of jumped out at them. And we were like, okay. And they were like, "Oh, but don't worry, was this an IVF pregnancy?" And we said yes, and said, "Don't worry, we've had some other mums come in, and for some reason the dating is just not marrying up with the IVF dates. So we'll come in next week, and we'll do another scan." So we were like, okay, great. But apart from that, everything was fine. I had also opted to do the screening tests, so I gave my blood
Yeah.
at that time, and
Mm-hmm.
we were waiting for the results. So the following week, I came in by myself without my husband at the time, because I thought, oh, it's just a little routine one. He didn't need to, he was working. I was like, it's fine, don't worry, I'll just go in and let you know. So went in, and they did the scan again, and Amari was still very small for her age at that time, or gestational age. And so they were all quiet, and when the sonographer's quiet, something's going on. And they just said, okay, she's still measuring small, but we'll have to, we'll let you talk to a counsellor because your screening results are in. So obviously at this point I thought, okay, something's not right, but I didn't know what. And then I came out, and the counsellor had then took me into a room and sat me down, and then she just said that the screening results had come back as well as Amari being small on the scan, and she was high risk for having trisomy 18 or Edwards syndrome. I obviously hadn't heard of this, like not many people have, until you get the results, because it's just nowhere to be seen anywhere. People don't talk about, you only really know about Down syndrome.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, what does this mean? Thinking it was just going to be, just something, like Down syndrome. What I was aware of at the time, anyway, was that something you can live with. It's not too bad. And things like you can kind of have a normal life with it. But the counsellor obviously then said, no, this is quite a serious condition. It's when the child has obviously a third extra chromosome and the 18th chromosome, and it's incompatible with life. The child will most likely be born with lots of health issues, birth defects, and will be suffering quite a lot. So would you like to terminate? It was just very much,
Wow.
that was it. And I was just in shock at this point, because it was just very much something I'd never heard of. It was all negative. I was just like, is there any chance that they could do well? And it was just, the counsellor at the time just said, well, the majority of these children don't survive the pregnancy, and if they do, they won't survive the birth or their first birthday, and they do suffer quite a lot. Obviously, we know this is an IVF pregnancy, so it's more precious to you. If you don't want to terminate, that's obviously your choice. But that was basically how it was framed, and that was it. And there was nothing other than that. It was just, there was no kind of good stories. So I came out of that room just completely shocked, devastated. Like the world as you knew it just was kind of gone, because it was just like we thought we'd got through the hard part with the IVF. Didn't just completely blindsided, basically, just didn't see this coming. And then obviously I had to call my husband because he hadn't come, because I thought it was just a little scan, and had to tell him the news over the phone. And yeah, that was really difficult, and that was to this day the hardest part of my whole journey with Amari, was just that consultation with the counselor. Yeah, it was just kind of a discussion where you felt like there was no hope. It wasn't a hopeful discussion at all. Yeah, but then we decided, obviously, we weren't going to terminate, because from the 2 scans we'd had, obviously Amari had seemed fine. We really wanted her. As they told us, basically she's going to pass away anyway, and that was how they framed it. We were thinking, well, if she's going to pass away, why would we do anything? We might as well let her make the decision. And also at that point we had just the NHS screening results, and there was another test that you can get, which was more accurate, the NIPT, where I would give blood, and then they would check for some of Amari's DNA in my blood to see if she had full, or the risk of having full trisomy 18. Because at the time when I got the results, I had, Amari had a 1 in 99 chance. And to me, after I did all my research,
that's not a big chance.
Yeah, but when I did like my research on Mumsnet and things like that, others had like a 1 in 4 chance and had been fine. So I thought, 1 in 99, it could be that they're wrong. And we're these small people. My husband and I were not tall, so I thought, she's probably just a small baby. So I got my hopes as well. And also, I was due to travel abroad for work for a month, to America. So it was just the timing was all a bit crazy. So I opted to do the blood test before I flew out. So I literally did it on the Wednesday, flew out on Friday, and was in America when I had to wait for the results. They came in about a week later, and then obviously, yes, that was also high risk of having trisomy, and that was the one where basically when it's at high risk, it's almost certain that they have it, because it's either super ridiculously low risk or pretty high risk, and that's what that came back as. So obviously, again, I was in America by myself for work, and I just, at the time, I had got it in the night because of the time difference, and then I had to go to work the next morning, into the office. And I just, because I didn't know what else to do, I was just thinking, well, there's nothing I can do to change the situation. I just kind of got myself together, had a cry myself, in obviously my apartment, and then I just, put on a brave face and went to work, just because I thought, well, if even that distract myself, or kind of just get stuck in my head, and there's nothing I can do from America anyway, and nothing I could do to change it. So I just went to work and didn't tell anyone that day, and just got through the day, because then it was a weekend, so that was a Friday, and then I had the weekend, and then I told my colleagues on the Monday. And they did say, would I want to go back? But again, because I thought there's nothing I could do, I only had another 3 weeks there. I was like, no, it's fine. It's better for me to be distracted, because I knew we weren't going to terminate as well. It didn't matter time-wise. So yeah, I went through that. I got back to the UK. I was about, I think at that point, almost 20 weeks pregnant, probably 19 weeks. So I did the amniocentesis as well to confirm it, and that again confirmed she had full trisomy 18. And at that point, they asked again, do you want to terminate? And we were like, no. So we just had decided that I just wanted to make sure I crossed, like, dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's with the testing and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, so that happened. And since then, we got 4 weekly scans, and every scan, Amari was doing well, and they were always saying, don't get your hopes up. She's probably not going to survive. So don't get your hopes up every scan. So in the end, we decided to stop being, again, hopeful for it. But once it got to the later scans, they stopped saying that, and they just started just having the scan, and that was it. They weren't saying don't get your hopes up anymore, because for us, our main goal then was, if she can survive the pregnancy, it'll be lovely to meet her. So we were just hoping, okay, let's hope she can be born alive. If not, we all obviously were prepared for that to bring her into the world and say goodbye then. And also, it was just a funny one to know that even with the amniocentesis, we already saw that she was so full of life that she literally, you'd see the needle and some go in, and she was trying to punch it away with her little fist.
Wow.
We were like, no, there's no way we're going to terminate when she's just so full of life already.
Yeah.
So that was she always was fun on the scans anyway. We always had lovely memories of her there. But yeah, so then the labour came around. I was induced, and it was pretty straightforward after being given the kind of hormones to get things going. It wasn't a very long labour. Not well, from mild contractions to full-on contractions. It was overnight. But then once the quick, like the strong contractions came, it was only 3 minutes of pushing, and then she was here.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
and was she born quite small?
She was 4 pounds 15 ounces. But she was born alive, eyes open. Wasn't saying anything, but was just awake, which was lovely. And so we gave her cuddles. We were quite mindful that we might not have much time with her, so we were just enjoying that time and kind of just trying to make the most of it and memories. And we got a photographer to come, and they give I think they're called Remember Me photographers.
Yes, or Remember My Baby. There might be a few different ones.
Well, they may be associated with them, but yeah, they came and took some photos for us so that we had some precious memories in the event, obviously, that she was going to pass, which is what we all expected. And on the night she was born, so we were in hospital, so she was born about 3:25 in the afternoon, and then in the evening was the first time where we thought we'd have to say goodbye, because that's when she had like an apnea episode, and she just went completely blue. Her face kind of did, the only thing I could liken it to is like if someone's having a stroke, it kind of went to one side. She just looked that was horrible, because she just looked like she was in pain. I don't know if she was, but that did make me sad, because obviously I never wanted her to be in pain. So it was just a moment where we just panicked. We didn't know what to do. We got the nurses, the midwives, and they came in and they just said, just it's fine, just hold her. So we were just sitting there holding her, and we're trying to see what happened and tried to get her to breathe, but she didn't. Until after what seemed like absolute ages. I mean, I don't even know how long it was. I didn't time it. It felt like ages. She eventually took a breath, and then the colour slowly came back, and she was started to be okay, and like her face went back to kind of just normal, relaxed, and then she was okay again. So then the midwives just kind of said okay, and then they left us again. We were just there with her in the room, and just happy to obviously have a bit more time with her. But then again, probably a couple of hours later, it happened again. We called the midwives, the same thing. They just said, just hold her, and this is your time to say goodbye. So again, we held her, waited for her to go. Like all this time, we didn't cry, because all I had in my mind was I wanted to be strong for her. I didn't want her to see anything negative. Like if she was going to be here, I just wanted her to see love and happiness. Sorry, it's getting emotional.
It's emotional recalling all of this, hey?
Yeah. So she didn't go, and we just again held her, and was just thankful that she was with us for another, like, as however long we were going to have her. But at that point, because we'd seen what the midwives and like how the hospital would treat it, we told them we would like to go home, because if she's going to pass, we're going to have her at home comfortable with us, and you're not going to do anything, because again they said they wouldn't do any interventions, any medical interventions. They wouldn't try and resuscitate anything like that. So we just were like, well, we'll just go home then, and take her home and enjoy her at home, and say our goodbye there whenever it's going to happen.
Makes sense.
That was like the birth journey and labour and everything. And
Mandy, when was she actually born? What was her date of birth? When was this?
She was born on the 17th of December, 2019.
And
it was pre-COVID, so that all kind of kicked off, which was kind of, for us, it was almost a blessing in disguise because we just had our time with her and we didn't have to worry about
Yeah.
people possibly coming
Yeah.
and doing, bringing anything in and things like that. So
Mm.
we kind of, in a sense, I know it's not good to say, but got lucky with that situation of being at home.
Mm.
So, and we got some
Mm.
really good quality time with her. And again, because we
Yeah.
expected her to pass away, we were just really enjoying her without any visitors. Yeah. And then at
Oh.
home, she just continued to do well. She had apnea episodes again, but she never went as blue. They always got a little bit less worse. She started to go more yellow, mottled. Um, and I think she just had them for a good 6 weeks, and then they
Oh.
stopped. Yeah, and then she's kind of stopped having them. So obviously, anyway, she had them in her sleep. You could see her like
Okay.
she had like obstructive sleep apnea at that point. Um, but apart from that, she was quite good. And then we were just lucky that she just kept getting stronger and stronger each day. Um, Not so much with the milk because obviously she couldn't drink. She, like a lot of
Mm.
children with trisomy 18, she didn't feed well. So we tried at first to just feed her by a bottle and syringes for two
Yeah.
weeks. And then unfortunately she just kept dropping the weight. She got really, really skinny. And that's when we were like, okay, we'll get the NG tube because it was suggested to us, but we just really wanted to have a normal experience with her as much
Mm.
as we could.
Mm.
And that's why we tried. And because she was drinking some, we thought, okay, we'll keep pushing it, see if she can get better with it. But obviously, she didn't. To get the volume she needed anyway to grow. So that's when we went for NG tube from about 2 weeks onwards, and then that was for her much better. She started to put on the weight
Okay.
again. She started to grow. She
Brilliant.
started to flourish. Um, but the NG tube itself was never great for her. It was quite traumatic because whenever it came out and they'd have to put it back in. It was always a trauma getting it in because she had quite small nasal
Mm.
passages. They could never get it in first time. They said she was one of the most difficult ones that they had to deal with, children with
Oh
NG. So
gosh.
it was horrible. Whatever it came out, we just hated it because she would just be screaming, and sometimes there'd be blood, and you knew it wasn't comfortable
Oh.
for her. Yeah, so we never wanted to have it, but at the same time, it was the thing that was keeping her going. So
Mm. Mm. Yeah, it was one of those catch-22. She had to have it, but it was making her life awful, and it's so hard for parents to watch that happening to their little baby.
yeah, and she was so small, as you can imagine, 4 pound 15.
Mm.
She was just so small, so it just felt even worse because she was just such a small little baby,
Oh,
so delicate.
precious. So she's what, about 3.5 now?
Yes, she's 3.5 now. She goes to school. She's so
Oh.
happy. She's thriving. Yeah, she's really amazing. She just kept proving the medical profession wrong, basically, and even to this day, their cardiologist he's just is so happy to see her because for him, I think personally for him, she's his longest kind of patient with Edwards syndrome. He's never had
Oh,
anyone survive past a few months. So
amazing.
he's always loves to see her. And yeah, she's just a little star, really.
Oh, that's lovely. So lovely to hear. So it's wonderful to have a positive story about trisomy 18 for a change.
Yes.
Um, Mandy, can I ask, through this whole journey, when was it that you actually found out about soft?
It was at hospital. So when
Okay.
they gave us the leaflet when the diagnosis kind of came through, but we never got in touch because it was very much as we said, we were letting Amari make all the decisions with what she was
Yeah.
going to do. So it was just always a leaflet that was in my drawer. um,
Mm.
and then obviously when she was born, again we were just waiting. There was the pandemic, so
Yeah.
again it was just nothing we really thought about fully. I only really started to look at it when she was starting to do well, because then I thought, oh, maybe there's other families out there. Maybe it would be good to get in touch. And then another family. I was the only place I spoke to people about it was on Mumsnet, and through Mumsnet I had another lady get in touch who had a daughter with trisomy 18 who sadly passed away, but she directed me to the Facebook group for families in the UK with trisomy
Yeah.
18 and 17, and that's how that all began. And that was just
Oh.
amazing, and that's also where I saw more about soft because it
Mm.
popped a lot more there. and the events and things. So, and
Yeah.
it's just amazing. The community is amazing, just a fountain of knowledge and experience, and the parents and people from Soft, both. It's
Oh,
really really amazing. And in hindsight, I wish I had looked at it more during the darker times, because again, like I said,
mm,
it was very, there was no hope. It wasn't a hopeful time for us because
yeah.
we would feel the negatives. But I would have realised more about the positives then, which would have been
Yeah.
helpful. Yeah,
Oh, that's really good feedback. I'm glad it's been a comfort and a useful resource for you. And
definitely.
yeah, but you did what you had to at the time to get through what you were going through. So we do often hear people get told about soft, and then only when the time is right for them do they get in touch, which is absolutely, fair enough.
Yeah,
So Mandy, talking about it's been lovely to hear about all about Amari. So can we talk about Dante now and your
yeah,
pregnancy after having had Amari, please?
yeah. So we always knew we wanted to have another child. The fact that after the genetic testing, they told us that the chance of having another child with trisomy 18 was like 1%. We were quite happy with that risk, and we always said, if it happens, it happens. If we're meant to have two children with trisomy 18, and then that's what's meant to happen. But
Mhm.
we were always going to try again, so we didn't let it phase us. And also because apart from obviously the health issues with Amari, she's just been such a wonderful, wonderful child. Like
Yeah,
she is an amazing child, first child. She did not put us
yeah,
off having children, another child, because she's just been so
yeah.
lovely. So yeah, at that point we were like, we always wanted to try again. We still had to go through IVF because of
Okay.
the same. We tried obviously to see if anything would happen naturally, but it didn't. So then we were like, okay, let's go down the IVF route again. We did a second round, it didn't work, but then we had one frozen embryo left from that round. And then that was Dante, who worked
Oh,
on the third time. Yeah, so he was just sitting in the freezer for a year waiting for us.
ah,
um,
sweet.
yeah, so he yeah, and that was successful. Again, the process of the pregnancy with you know with the previous trisomy 18 diagnosis and then IVF altogether, for us it was never going to be um, you know a pregnancy that you could take lightly anyway. We were always going to worry.
Oh,
Only with Amari we worried until the 12th week mark. Only with Dante we worried even later now because of that. So it just added.
yeah,
So I do envy uh, the parents that have had pregnancy spontaneously and no issues, and
yeah,
they've had that joy from the beginning. They get to feel that
yeah,
excitement and everything, because unfortunately we never got that. But at the same time, I really enjoyed my pregnancy with Amari because I really had a bond with her straight away because I knew what was
yeah,
happening. It was
yeah.
such a lovely pregnancy. So it was funny that I expected it to be the same with Dante and it wasn't.
Oh,
But only
yeah.
because I guess because I had longer worrying what would happen. So,
Mm,
and it was
mm,
very much I wasn't letting myself get attached. Whereas with Amari,
mm,
because we got the diagnosis early, I let myself really enjoy the pregnancy and my time
mm.
with her, with me.
Yeah,
With Dante, I was very much don't get attached until we're at that safe point. We didn't
mm,
announce at the 12-week scan, which we did with Amari because of what happened last
mm,
time. With Amari, we announced, and then I had to go to that scan a week later, and then go back to everybody and tell them bad news after the
mm,
good news. So with
mm.
Dante, we literally waited. We didn't tell anyone until after the 20-week scan, and then obviously by then it also was a bit obvious I was showing, so couldn't really get away with it any longer either.
Yeah,
Um, and I was very worried with the pregnancy with Dante. I worried I wasn't going to bond with him because I couldn't feel the same connection that I felt with my pregnancy with
mm,
Amari. I was worried I wasn't going to love him as much because I love Amari so much. Um,
yeah,
and it was just, yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get that same experience. It was still obviously you know, thankfully a straightforward pregnancy,
yes,
morning sickness, etc., all that. But it had to, I had to wait until he was born to get all those feelings. And when
yeah,
he was here and safe, that's when I got, the feelings of love, and he's amazing, just like
yeah.
Amari. But he also had an eventful journey into the world.
Oh no.
He was born by emergency C-section because
Oh.
he went the full 2 weeks late, and then the labour. I was in labour for the whole day, and it just wasn't progressing as it should have. So they were thinking something must be wrong, and his heart rate kept dropping on contractions.
Mm.
Um, he had opened his bowels inside because when they
Oh,
opened the broke
no.
the waters, they saw he'd done that, and obviously babies generally do that when they're in distress. So
Mm.
at that point, they were like, "Look, we're going to have to do a C-section because nothing's happening," and I've
Mm.
been in labour for the whole day.
Mm.
So we had the C-section. It turned out that he had the cord wrapped around him quite tightly. They
Oh.
said there was no way he was coming out because it was so tight that they had to unwrap him to get him out when they did the C-section
Oh,
as well. So
wow.
he was just in there, like he couldn't move, which makes sense with the contractions. Um,
Mm.
yeah, so but he came out healthy, a healthy 9 pounds 4 ounces. He was big.
Brilliant. Big boy.
Yeah, and yeah, so he did come out okay, thankfully. But what I will say, which is the interesting point, and I think probably stemming from my journey with Amari, was that when his heart rate dropped at one point and they couldn't feel it, they couldn't hear it, and they had to rush me to the labour ward because I was in B where they just get induced. So they had to rush me, sorry, to the delivery ward because obviously they couldn't get a heartbeat. At that
Mm.
point, I remember just thinking, okay, so potentially you're gonna have a stillbirth now, and I just was very like very just calm about it, just like matter of fact about it. Because again, I think from my experience before, it was very much don't couldn't get excited until he was there anyway. I was just very
Mm.
much like just hoping things go well, but not never get my hopes up. So I just was telling myself, yeah, okay, you can get through this. You might have a stillbirth. That happens. You can get through it. You've got through Amari. You can get through this.
Yeah.
Um, and and the doctor at the time he was just like, you're very calm. I'm like, well, there's nothing I can do. Like it's very much there's just
Mm.
nothing I can do. Whatever's going to happen is going to
Mm.
happen. So, and I don't know if if that was because of what I've been through with Amari, if it gave me
Yeah.
that kind of, I would say strength, but also just acceptance of things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that was just an interesting point because I didn't think,
Really
well, nobody
interesting.
knows how you're going to react in those situations. But
No.
yeah, it was. But it, obviously now thinking back, I'm just so thankful that it did turn out how it did, and he's here
Yeah,
and
of course.
yeah. So different journeys, both kind of traumatic in their own way. So yeah,
Oh goodness, you've been through a lot, Mandy. So, how old is Dante now?
he is 5 months now. Nope,
Oh
almost 5 months. He'll
wow.
be 5 months on the 6th, so he's almost five.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, fantastic. And how have you found caring for the two of them? I mean, obviously a newborn's got a lot of needs, and
Yeah.
Amari probably has, some complex needs. How have you coped?
So, because of the C-section, I wasn't able to do anything with Mari for 4 to 6 weeks. I did the full 6 weeks
Sure.
anyway. And the main thing I didn't like about that was obviously the guilt. She was just right there. I couldn't pick her up. I couldn't
Mm,
play with her. And I had Dante as well. And I just felt really bad because I felt like all she could see was me with this other child. And I was just
yes,
hoping that
yes.
she didn't feel abandoned.
Yeah.
Um, and thankfully we had the grandparents around. She had her father around, my husband, so she always got the love. But I just felt I really did feel like I wasn't giving her the love she was used to from me as
Mm,
well. But she seemed okay. So apart from the emotional kind of side of things, that was the toughest part
mm,
for me. Um,
okay.
otherwise, as to like children or babies, it's almost like I feel like a parent of twins because Amari's so
Okay.
proud, like she's like a baby. Now when I'm
Mm,
dealing with them together, I feel like I have twin babies because
mm,
Amari can't sit up herself. She can't do anything for it.
no.
Like Dante can't do anything for himself. So it's almost
Mm.
like what I expect, parents of twins go through. You can't do
That's
anything.
so interesting, but it makes sense, makes complete sense because of her condition.
Yeah. And like the hardest time is bath time because Dante wants a lot of attention from me all the time. And I have to give her a bath. I have to switch, I
Mm,
have to.
mm,
So sometimes he's
mm.
just screaming in the background while I'm giving her a bath. And I just have
I
to like
love it.
do it because there's nothing I can do. So I feel, unfortunately, she still feels, for me, I feel like I neglect her a bit still, even more because I knew how much attention I gave her. in the past.
Mm,
So
mm.
I do feel guilty. I just hope that she's, she is such a happy girl that she generally is quite happy if you put her in front of, the TV and put her baby programs on. She's quite happy. You give her a rattle, she's quite happy to play by herself. Um,
Yeah.
but I just can't help feeling, guilty for just like leaving her sitting there while I deal with her brother.
Well, I think
But
what you're describing there is common for any second-time parent, whether there's special needs involved or not. I think there's a lot of guilt when you've had your one and only child and you've given them all your love and attention. Suddenly, when the second one comes along, it is tough. And I'm sure you're echoing people's feelings who've been in a more straightforward situation than you.
yeah, and I'm thankful that Amari's in school though, because she
Mm.
gets all her stimulation and people around her 5 days of the week, which is yeah, amazing. So that really helps in that sense.
Yeah, yeah,
But
absolutely.
it can be hard though, because Amari vomits now and then quite a bit.
Mm.
That can be the hardest if I have Dante and like I'm feeding him or something, and then she happens to decide now's the time she wants to vomit. Of course, that's difficult because I either have to like break off the feed just to quickly go to it, or
Mm.
just try and do both, like with him there and like my other hand free, and
Mm.
just try and
Mm.
get the muslin and try and it's just to avoid any mess and things more than anything. She's quite
Mm.
good because generally she's always in an upright position, so we're lucky that
Okay.
choke on it a lot, but obviously you have to be there to make
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Um, so that's probably the hardest part with them together. It's when she has her vomiting episodes.
Mm.
Or
Mm.
sometimes
Okay.
she has a dirty nappy because sometimes they can kind of go everywhere.
Okay.
That's the most challenging time, and also taking them both out. Now I've
Mm.
realised obviously Amari she can't walk. She's in her wheelchair buggy. Dante can't walk. My only other option at the moment when I'm by myself is to have him in a carrier and push
Mm.
her. And then if we go
Yeah.
into the supermarkets, because obviously you then need a trolley,
Trolley.
it's so
Oh,
hard
wow.
because I don't know what to do
Mm.
with them. Like he can be in a carrier, I can put the carrier on the trolley, but then what do I do with her? However,
Mm.
game changer, last week I went to Tesco and they actually had a trolley. I don't know if anyone else has seen them, but a trolley for carers of disabled people. I would say people because it's adult size, but Amari's still fit in it.
Mm.
Of
Mm.
people who can't walk, because it was literally seated towards the person pushing the trolley. It's all padded. It had a strap for the waist and a seat belt, and between the legs as well,
Wow.
harness. So I was able to put Amari in as if she was, she's staring at me. I've got the handles and Dante in the basket, in the trolley part, and
Brilliant.
that was amazing. So I'm hoping that maybe I don't know if that's a one-off at Tesco, but it'd be amazing if the supermarkets now are kind of switching on to that because
Yes.
it made shopping so much easier. Because since then I've just been putting her in the trolley, trying to prop her up,
Brilliant.
unfortunately. um, yeah, so they're the challenging times. It's bath time when she has her health needs and getting them out together when I'm by
It's
myself.
just things you wouldn't think of that would,
Yeah,
simple things that somebody else might take for granted, just going to the shops or nipping here, nipping there.
yeah,
It's a whole logistical organization for you to get out the door with the two of them.
yeah. But we're very lucky because Amari doesn't have too many serious health needs. She's obviously got her feeding issues, so she has a gastro tube. She's tube fed. Um, she has obviously the developmental delay mentally, so she's non-verbal, doesn't walk, can't sit unaided. We're working on it with the physios, but we're still trying to get her head control resolved because at the moment she's just not strong enough with it to be able to then do the other things. So that's the first goal for
Mm.
her.
Mm.
And she obviously she gets a bit constipated, which I think is just linked with her digestive issues.
Mm.
But other
Mm.
than that, we're quite lucky in that she's not too bad. She's obviously high risk for like getting things like pneumonia and things like that. And when she's ill,
Yeah.
she does pick up colds a lot and she does get chesty a lot. But
Mm.
thankfully, we've been able to get around it with antibiotics. She's only
Yeah.
had a couple of spells in hospital the early days when we weren't sure, how to go about it. But
Yeah.
since then, we've managed it. Yeah. So
Brilliant.
so
So
it's
she's
not too
on the yeah, she's on the lesser affected end of the spectrum by the sounds of it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as far as we're aware, I know she's high risk for seizures, so we're always monitoring that because
Mm.
that's the scary thing for me. It's always because I
Mm.
know that once seizures start, then obviously the risk goes up a bit, and so I'm
Mm.
always monitoring for that. just hoping that she doesn't have them, or if she does, I'm hoping they
Yeah,
never really bother her too much.
they're milder
Yeah.
in affecting her. And Mandy, how do the two children relate to each other? I know he's still very little, Dante, but
Yeah.
how do they get on, or have you started seeing them interact?
So it's funny because I think Amari wants to play with him. If she looks at him, she smiles. She'll put her hand in his hand, like if it's there. She'll always she's quite tactile when she likes someone or something. She always tests them out by just putting her hand there still for a while until she's happy, and then she might tap more or she might grab.
Oh,
So she puts her hand in his hand at the moment, so she's at that stage.
sweet.
Sometimes she taps him. He will kind of look at her thinking, "What are you doing?" And sometimes he'll smile at her, sometimes he'll roll over to her and try and play with her.
Oh,
Um,
sweet.
Other times when she's having her happy moments where she likes to make noises, he'll just look at her thinking, "What is going on over there?" You can just see in his face, he's thinking, "What is happening?" And she's just happy.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I'm really looking forward to when he gets older and he can play with her a lot more, because I think they're gonna
Oh,
really
sure.
enjoy being,
Oh,
little playmates. Yeah, because I can
yeah.
see there already, which is lovely. It's so nice to see. Yeah.
Sounds very cute. It must be amazing to watch the two of them, and it will only get better, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's it. Be lovely. The only thing is now I have to worry about him pulling her tube, not just her, because he's
Gosh,
valuable.
yes. Oh my goodness. Because then if he does, can you put her back in at home? You know how to do that now, do you?
Yeah,
Or would you have to take her into the hospital or something?
I've learned how to do that. I've had a couple of tries with nurses, the community nurses, and I've had a try myself. I've gone back to having the nurses do it just because Amari doesn't like it, so I'm kind of keeping that the medical side of things just to the nurses, just so that I can continue to just be
Mm,
mum. But I know how
mm,
to do it in an emergency if I
yeah,
need to do it quickly
yeah,
now. So
yeah.
yeah,
Okay, okay, good.
yeah,
Mandy, as we start to wrap up, I just wanted to talk to you about the Soft Family Days. So, during in May this year, sorry, we had a family day, Soft UK Family Day in Northampton, and you came to share Amari's story. So, just wanted to ask what that was like, that experience, and it was a room full of people, most of whom you
yeah.
would probably never have met, and how did you enjoy it? And what would your feedback be about the day for anyone who's never been to a family day?
I thought it was really, really lovely. A great day to meet other parents and see their children, which was lovely. The ones that were still with us. Obviously, it's also sad to you realise there's some parents there that where their children aren't there. So it's but it's still nice to meet them and know that everyone's together and there to support each other, which is just so lovely. Talking to a room full of people, I'm not the best public speaker. But it was nice to share Amari's story because I'm always um, trying to spread awareness because of my journey
Mm,
as well, and I'm sure you're all familiar with it, where there isn't much awareness out
mm,
there for Trisomy 18.
mm,
All the stories generally are quite negative. I'm always quite happy
mm.
to share Amari's story to get that positive message out, so that there is hope again for those who might need it at some point on their journey or in their life in general. Yeah, so it was good to share her journey, her story, sorry, and just to see other parents, and also to have Amari meet the other children too, and to be there.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's nice, and the different ages, and obviously we got to meet the famous Saskia, 31,
yeah,
amazing. Just another inspiration
amazing.
and hope for
Yeah,
all of us and those with
yeah,
them that still have children that they just are hoping can continue to
yeah.
flourish. It's nice to see, because again, you don't see that anywhere, you don't hear of it.
No.
It's just there's just nothing out there. So
Mm,
yeah, and I
mm,
definitely recommend the family days to anyone that would like to just hear more about the professionals working around the teams as well. They're so
yeah.
helpful and so informative. And then for the support side of things, and just generally, it was quite nice to also have a day out for Amari.
Okay. Yeah.
That worked for her because, as again, most parents with send children in general must understand how hard it is to have days out for them. So to be
Um,
around like-minded people and children and it's catered for them again. Also, really, really great. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Well, that's great feedback, Mandy. And I mean, as someone who's just said you're not good at public speaking, you spoke beautifully on the day in front of, in person, in front of all those strangers, and you're doing fantastically well on the podcast. So I think you can stop saying that about yourself. You've done really well.
Thank you.
So yeah, it's been really super speaking to you and hearing all about your experiences and your journeys. And yeah, just wanted to say thank you again for joining us. Is there any message you'd like to share with somebody listening that maybe is following a similar journey to yours? I just wanted to give you the chance to say what you'd like to say.
Yeah, I think if you're on a similar journey, I guess you already know. I mean, I always say your child, they'll do what they need to do, and that's what we did with Amari. We let her kind of take control. But the one thing I didn't appreciate back at the beginning of my journey was to advocate for your children. And I know a lot of parents do advocate a lot. And so in hindsight, I would have advocated more for Amari, from the medical profession to get more interventions, just because I just took for granted that they weren't available. Now I know that that's not the case. So anyone that's on the journey like me that isn't sure, if you want to push for something from the medical profession, I would say push, because some of them say, that there's nothing they can do, when you hear other stories and clearly there is something they can do. They're not doing it at their hospital yet or something. I don't know. Or maybe you just have to push a bit more. Other than that, I would just say there's a lot of love that comes from these children, and obviously love you can give to them too, and it is wonderful. So they're obviously scary and dark times, but there's a lot of light too.
That's such a beautiful way to end off our podcast. So thank you, Mandy. Thank you for sharing your experience, your wisdom, and your lovely message at the end there. And thank you to everyone who's been listening today for tuning in. And just to say that if you're an expectant parent, a bereaved parent, a family member, or even a professional seeking support and information, we are here for you. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and our contact information will be found in the podcast description. So stay tuned for more episodes, and thank you for joining us.